Yo, what is going on, Guardians? J-Man here, and today we're talking about underrated weapons for Destiny 2 PvP. Folks are always asking me what guns I'm using in my videos, and I think I get this question so often because I typically don't use the most popular weapons. And that's not because I don't want to be viewed as someone who abuses the meta. Instead, I actually try to find ways to counter these busted firearms, considering that's what most people use. I also think it's safe to say that when something is getting exploited so often, it's probably destined for a nerf, so I don't want to get too comfortable with that no time to explain. In this video, I'd like to quickly break down 5 underrated weapons that are not only killer options as of today, but can only get better with upcoming sandbox tunings. We are one patch away from being in a sidearm meta, which is why I'd like to start with the trial sidearm, Forgiveness. This aggressive frame 2-burst minigun is wild and actually has zero competition. The only other 2-burst sidearm in the energy slot is Brass Attacks, which cannot compete in the base stats department. Forgiveness has exceptional perk options for both PvE and PvP, including highlights like Moving Target, well-rounded, and Rapid Hit. And did I mention this thing has the lovely Demolitionist and Adrenaline Junkie combo? Aside from stats and perks, I love the Forgiveness because it feels amazing on mouse and keyboard. I always had trouble getting into sidearms like Drang or Brigand's Law because something just felt off about them while using M and K. And it's worth noting that Forgiveness is Arc, so it has some nice synergies with the Arc 3.0 subclasses. And if you can manage to get an Adept roll from the Flawless chest, even better. Continuing with the Trials theme, I am still shocked that I don't see anyone using Burden of Guilt. Look, I've had my fair share of time abusing fusion rifles, but this kinetic adaptive frame is arguably the stickiest one I've ever used. Now, back in my day, I was more of a fan of the rapid-fire frames like Lonely Suspect and Cartesian Coordinate, mostly because I like the fast charge time and how I can play aggressively. And when those were nerfed, I had a hard time picking up precision frames like Main Ingredient because they took just way too long to charge. And that's why I fell in love with Burden of Guilt, since it does charge up quicker. How can you go wrong with Perpetual Motion and high impact reserves, and like Forgiveness, this thing has an adept version that will make your opponents rage. For my hand cannon enthusiasts that are struggling to live in a pulse rifle world, I give you pure poetry. I'm not going to go into too much depth here because we already did a full review on this one, but in case you missed it, this is officially my favorite kinetic 120 RPM hand cannon. Thanks to exceptional perk options, awesome origin traits, and base stats that are decent enough to work with, Pure Poetry feels consistent, reliable, and snappy. If you haven't snagged one of these, go run some strikes as soon as possible. Arguably my favorite exotic perk in the game is Hawkmoon's Para-Casual Shot. It's a brilliant balance that greatly rewards skill, yet isn't too overpowered and must be earned. A lot of really top tier players have discovered Hawkmoon's effectiveness in the current sandbox, and I think it's time more people catch on to the trend. In this passive meta, you oftentimes find yourself jiggle peeking opponents endlessly. And what's great about Hawkmoon is if you build up enough para-casual rounds, you can knock out that pesky warlock who's been sitting in a rift for the past decade. It might not be the most optimal weapon on larger maps, but can be a lethal tool in the mid-ground if you can master the ways of the Hawk. Last but not least, we have an exotic that I've personally put over 17,000 defeats on. Every day I'm scratching my head wondering how Duality is not the most used shotgun in the game. The ability to combine a slug that outranges many archetypes with all the utility of a pellet spread is unmatched. I love to slide into folks' faces, surprising them with the one-hit kill capabilities that Duality provides. And if anyone tries to return that aggression, I always have my hipfire as a backup. I strongly recommend giving Duality a shot if you haven't done so already. My friends, those are the 5 weapons that I think are pretty underrated right now, and hey, they might even get better with upcoming sandbox changes. If you have a weapon you've been using that you think deserves to be in the spotlight, definitely comment that below because I'd love to give it a shot. If you enjoyed the background gameplay, please help me out with a like on the video and consider subscribing to the channel. And as always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the Cosmodrome.